So, hello everybody. I hope you had a nice lunch break. So now you will be hearing a talk about software development in the German healthcare market, and you will learn what all these acronyms like e-prescription, WOS, and FHIR mean. Guiding us today will be our two speakers, Andrei Gramada and Dr. Stefan Kunkel. Andrei Gramada, he's a front-end developer from CompuGroup Medical, and in the last 6 years he contributed to projects enhancing medical care through software. He's passionate about UX, software architecture, and creating solutions that help practitioners save time. Dr. Stefan Kunkel, he's a senior consultant with TNG Technology Consulting and a full-stack developer with a focus on the backend. He has extensive experience in development, infrastructure, and operation of data-intensive and distributed applications. Until very recently, he was responsible for architecture, DevOps, and deployment at Ifap for prescription software. So the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks, Florian, for the kind introduction. Okay, thanks for the kind introduction, and let's get going. As you said, we will talk about e-prescription, WOS, FHIR. We will talk about the German healthcare market and the software therein, and we will do it with a deep dive into prescription software. That is the software that in the end prints out your prescription you take to the pharmacy, and explain all those cryptic things here.
All right, so we're going to first have a look at the software that you'll meet in a practice. Second, we're going to have a little role play where I'll play the practitioner and I'll have Stefan as my patient. Then we'll touch upon the regulation from the healthcare German market and how they impact our software and development in general. And last but not least, we'll touch upon all the challenges that we face day-to-day developing the software.
Okay, so what software does a practitioner actually need? So first of all, a medical practice is a business. So a doctor needs business software for taxes, employees, schedules, and so on and so on. But other than typical businesses, he or she also has medical devices, and those also often have software. Then a doctor has patients, and those patients are typically stored somewhere. And to store, retrieve, edit, or display patient data, he has a special kind of software that is called Patient Management System, or PVS for the German Patientenverwaltungssystem. And last but not least, this is the software that Andrei and me and the whole team is developing. That is the prescription software, or short WOS for the German Verordnungssoftware, that is used to research medications, create medications plans, and in the end, prescribe stuff. How does it look like? So if you've ever been at a doctor and probably you have taken a look across his desk at his display, you will have seen something like this, or like this, or like this. Kind of busy-looking desktop applications with a kind of dated look. And what are the main characteristics of these older kinds of software? They are typically desktop applications. They are typically single user. And most importantly, they typically require one-to-one integration between different applications.
All right. Now that we at least have seen a little bit of what the prescription software is, let's role play a little bit into one workflow that the practitioner would do typically during his work. But for this, we're going to use the software that we've been developing, so you can see now what's the new offering. Right? So I'll take my assistant, but also patient, so he's multi-role today.
Yeah, so you see me here, obviously 26 years old, obviously 1.95 meters big. I am as a patient at the praxis of Professor Dr. Andrei Gramada, and we will do our thing.
Awesome. Okay, so the first question that we'll probably get asked, Stefan, when you go to the doctor is, why are you here? Why does it bother? What does it bother you?
Yeah, so I was referred back to you from my specialist for my typical software developer disease, crippling back pain.
Okay, and besides that, I see that you also have another quite familiar problem that software developer has. It's you have allergies, I see, right?
Yes.
So now all the trees are out and blooming. Probably you still have issues and sneezing all the time when you're going out, right?
Yeah, so if we can do those things in one go, would be pretty great.
Okay, awesome. But first, let's address your pain. So let's actually search for something that probably all of you will kind of understand what it does, right? So we're gonna search for pain break. Right. And of course, all of you, all of you very familiar with this medication, morphine, probably on the weekends, right? So looking at Stefan, I think this drug will fit him very well.
Yes, yes,
So-
I do enjoy a bit of morphine, right?
Amazing. Right, Stefan. So the first things first is you do enjoy the drug, but I need to tell you how to take it. So for this, we need to create for you a medication plan, right? So let's do that. So just for everybody in the back as well to see, we have a list of medication. And in this list, you'll be able to see the medication we search based on either name or active substance, anything that the doctor might be can use to find the suitable medication for the patient, right? So let's go with the first one and add it to the medication plan. Now, another thing that you will ask your patient would be, when does it hurt the most? When does it bother you the most during the day?
Yeah, so when I get up and then when I'm trying to sleep, the pain is most extreme.
Okay, so basically the whole life. Okay, then let's put it this way. We have a dosing scheme, which will tell you when you should take the medication. So let's say morphine, it's a bit strong, but you'll handle it. So let's say that we will do one in the morning and none during the day and one at night, right? You said that it hurts when you go to sleep as well. Awesome. Now, another thing that we must choose is the diagnosis, right? So you didn't come here just because you want morphine. Some specialists actually recommended you to get it because you are suffering from a back problem, right? So we're going to select the diagnosis that your specialist, the specialist diagnosed you with. And of course, we're going to add some hints. Well, what goes good with morphine? Well, a glass of water, right? So all the medication that you need to take would be good to take it with a glass of water. And of course, you shouldn't really be driving. So let's say, do not drive. Right, and the treatment reason, let's say, pain management. Listen, I'm a great doctor, but this is not medical advice, okay? All right, so we have one problem down. Let's solve Stefan out with his sneezing as well. So this time, we're going to search for active substance, right? So Laura, okay, perfect. We got a suggestion for an active substance that will treat his inflammation. And let's go with this one. And again, same question. When does it annoy you the most?
So during the day when I'm up and about.
Great. Okay, then, so nothing in the morning and during the day, of course. If it annoys you, just take it. But yet again, you know what to do. And we'll select the diagnosis that you have allergies. And of course, the glass of water cannot be missed here. So take it with a glass of water. Right, treatment reason, let's put allergies. And finish it up. Now, of course, on the right, we have all the list of medication that we have for this medication plan. But let's see how this actually will look like once I have to give it to my patient, right? So we have all the information about the patient itself, for who it is. He's, again, 26 years old, clearly. Morphine is working wonders. Right, so though I value his life, so I would say, listen, I would say that you should take morphine, but for a limited period of time, right, while you're recovering from the surgery, let's put it this way, right? So we can then categorize the medication into, for what reason are you taking it, or what we can do is add more information on the medication plan so Stefan is not confused when he goes home and sees it. So one thing we're going to do is put morphine under medication that should be taken only for a limited period of time. And let's see the update. And we can clearly see now that there's an update saying that, hey, don't
take it forever.
Don't push it, mister, you know. Great. Now, this is for you. This is what you're going to take home, and you're going to read it and respect it, of course. But, OK, how do you get the medication? You need the prescription, right? So let's create the prescriptions for you. And this way, we can just select one medication we want to prescribe. We'll have them both selected for both of Stefan's illnesses, let's put it this way. And, of course, on the right side now, we're going to see a few things under the Rezept area. Similarly, we can see now the previews of those. And first things first, we're going to give you an electronic prescription. I think you're pretty good with computers, so I think you can handle a PDF. And more than that, we have now the special stuff, which is your morphine, which needs to be printed on this special piece of hardware right here. It's quite old, but we use it for a purpose. Right. Just for you, Stefan, to know, you cannot really, take a morphine whenever you want. You have to do it through really strict legislation, and this is where the printer comes in clutch, let's put it this way, because it makes sure that only specific people with specific paper formats and specific paper types can actually print it. Now, this looks good to you, right? All yes. Good?
All
great.
Good.
Of course. Now, let's actually issue the prescriptions and have you on your way. We'll click Issue, and the first things I have to do is actually sign any prescription, right? Probably you guys all have seen that you go to your doctor, and on a piece of paper, it's easy. You just scribble it, and you're good to go. But what happens on electronic prescriptions, where you need to sign it, typing in your practitioner PIN, something like this. It's a card reader. You have a practitioner card. You type it in, put it in, actually, and then you have a PIN that you type to actually sign the prescription. So in this case, let's select our test card, and I'm just going to click Sign. Then I'll type in my very, very, very secure PIN, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we are at the point where we can actually print. So now, again, this marvelous piece of ingenuity comes into play where we need to select it for the narcotic prescriptions. Here again, we don't want Stefan to be able to replicate it later on, and then the subheader I put there with take it only for a limited period of time goes out the window. So we select the printer and the medication plan. Let's leave it out for now because this is the most important thing, let's say. And we'll click Print. And now this list needs a little bit of encouragement. Please don't.
No.
It's okay, Stefan. You need to be patient. See what I did there? Okay, hopefully now.
Yeah.
See. It's a little bit of encouragement goes a long way. Please wait, everybody. Perfect.
Yeah.
See? See how quick he was into taking this thing? Awesome, Stefan. So keep this real close and be careful with it. And now let's go back to our presentation and talk a little bit more about the technical part of things. So let me, okay, sorry for the technical, and here we go.
Right, so now we have seen the demo, we have seen how, let's say, modern UX design can look like, right? Web-based and in a browser. And now the question is, how did we get there, right? What drove the change from old monolithic desktop application to, well, browser web-based applications? Well, of course, it's the user. Old users die out. Newer users have just higher standards in regards to UX and UI. Second of all, also the company, well, does have a vision like CGM, which has the vision that no one should die because medical information was not present at a critical point in time. But those two are the same for, well, every commercial software project, right? what is a bit special about the healthcare market that the regulator does take a very active role in forming or forcing change in healthcare software. So, what kind of change does the regulator drive? Well, it specifies workflows. It specifies certain implementation details, and perhaps most importantly, it specifies how and in which format data should be exchanged.
Right, and let's talk first about the workflows themselves.
No.
Oh,
You skipped me.
sorry, I took the morphine instead. Sorry.
Yeah, so the regulator in our case is the Kassenärztliche Bundesvereinigung, KBV, that represents the physicians that are allowed to treat publicly insured patients. It certifies software. That is the important thing for us. It does, of course, much more. And the gag is, or what gives it its power over software companies, doctors that are allowed to treat publicly insured patients may only use certified software.
All right, now. So let's talk a little bit about the workflows themselves, right? So you guys seen how we create a prescription, and let's take an example of our prescribe dialog here. So KBV actually tells you that, hey, your prescription software should be able to, well, create prescriptions. But what should be on them, right? So you should have a specific area for your patient information, and it should fit a specific standard. The same for your practitioner and pharmacy and so on. But not only that, is also how we treat, for example, the dosing scheme, and also the diagnosis that you have to have. And of course, the glass of water, really important for the hints. And treatment reason and accident information, and any other kind of information that is also provided for your public insurance, right? Because KBV is really mainly responsible for the publicly insured patients.
So, next to the workflows, the regulator also specifies certain implementation details. You have seen in our demo this search table. The order of the items is no accident. It must be that way. For example, the cheapest drug must be on top. Second of all, it must be possible to search for alternatives, right? There's a button you can click. You can't see it, but it is there. And many other things need to be displayed in this table, right? Second thing is it specifies specifies that the software needs to log certain kinds of data for traceability reasons. And it also specifies that you need to secure your access. So this is kind of common sense, but it is specified. And now, next, after the implementation, I already said the most important thing is the data exchange. Where does the patient data come from? When we showed you the demo, my information, so my patient data, his practitioner data, was already there. But our software does not store it. Right? In that sense, a prescription software is stateless. It does not have patient data. So where did it come from? And this is specified by KBV. It comes via FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. That is an international standard that is used in, I think, 20 countries or so. It aims to model the whole domain of healthcare data, so a huge domain. It also specifies an REST API that is used to query or create those resources, and it is extensible. So it is clear that it cannot specify the whole world, but it does give you a kind of manual on how to extend those resources. So how does it look like? As a domain model, it has resources as building blocks and profiles for customization. So resources are something like patient or insurance or allergies or many other things. These are the building blocks of a FHIR resource. And the profiles are done by regulatory bodies like KBV, adapted to certain markets, like in Germany. An address, PLZ, always has 5 digits, right? That's German specific, and it is specified by KBV. Sorry, one more thing. And so just for the size, it has hundreds of resources, and I don't know, 700 code system like ICD-10 for diseases or UCUM for units of measurement. And each of those also has its certain validations or restrictions.
All right, but how do you actually implement FHIR? And here it comes to mainly two ways. There are more, but these are kind of the dominant ones that most of the organizations use. The first one, it's a FHIR GPA server. But what does this actually mean? This means that you store your data in a FHIR format, right? Like the Stefan just showed you. This is mainly used for enterprise or web application where you just build it out and you want to do it good from scratch. So you're using this. So, okay, how do you interact with it? Of course, you're going to have some business logic service, right, where you'll do all your workflows and whatnot. But how do you actually interact with the FHIR resources themselves? Well, you use a library such as FHIR. So there are many of them, but this one I think is one of the most popular and the one that we use. And it offers you, well, ability to do operations on FHIR data and also validation for all the resources that you create or read and so on, just to make sure that if you're creating a FHIR resource, for example, a medication, and some other company tries to read that data, it's in the right format and you won't get into situations where you'll get validation errors. And of course, this all ties with your workflows in the UI where, for example, in our case, we read the patient and it was validated, we got it, it was fine, and then we showed it. This, of course, it's kind of the, let's say, for the new guys on the healthcare market. But what happens for the big organization that has been existed for many, many years, right? So in this case, most likely you already have a huge amount of data, right? You have your own patients that have been here to practice, for many, many years. And you don't really want to get rid of the data, of course, and to migrate it to FHIR, it's really expensive and time intensive, right? So what are the options here? Well, there's a concept called the FHIR facade, and what this does is just a translation layer. This will deal with the HTTP processing and parsing and the serialization and also all the FHIR semantics that deal with, need to be dealt with the FHIR data. And usually, for example, if you have big hospitals again, right, where they existed for a long time and now they have to comply with FHIR because of regulation from the government, they usually approach this scenario. And of course, the rest is the same as the previous solution. You just have then a business logic, and of course, you'll interact with your FHIR facade to convert the data that you need. Okay, now let's take the example of the two types of patient, or rather healthcare software that you'll meet in a normal practice, right? So we have a patient management system on the left and one on the right, or whatever the way you're sitting. And let's see how they actually communicate, right? So we have two systems, and in between, you're going to have a FHIR server. Now, on the left, you're going to have a list of patients. Of course, you can get them from the FHIR server. Then you might want to get the allergy of a specific patient or a diagnosis, such as we did for the case of Stefan. And last but not least, if you need a medication plan from the past or his medication history, you can, of course, get it from the FHIR server. Now, the funny thing is here, how do you get the data from the patient management system to the prescription software? How does it work? Well, actually, it works on a concept called a bundle. And a bundle means a bunch of medication, or a bunch of resources, rather, put in together to accomplish something. So in our case, imagine it this way. You want to create a prescription. What do you need for it? You need the patient, of course. Who do you prescribe it to? You need his insurance, so you know what kind of prescription you prescribe. You need his allergies, so you don't prescribe something that can affect his health. And of course, you need his previous medication plan. Maybe in the past, he already took some medication that you can just re-prescribe, right? Once you've created this bundle, then it's actually ready to be transmitted to the prescription software. But you don't just send the whole data object. You just need the ID, telling basically the prescription software, hey, please open with that bundle of information. And at that point, we just get it from the same place, the FHIR server. So the FHIR server will act like the single source of truth for all these workflows. And of course, now in the software, you'll do the workflows that you guys already seen, where we created a prescription for Stefan, and so on and so forth. And once you do that, again, you'll use a bundle. But now, with all the resources that you now have created. So for the case of Stefan, we created 2 prescriptions and a medication plan. So of course, we're going to have him as a patient, and a new medication plan, and the 2 prescriptions. And basically, that ends up the whole circle of life in FHIR, let's put it this way, where you always communicate through FHIR. Now, this is just a pure example with a few things that we can do with our software. But just like Stefan mentioned, there are hundreds of types of resources, everything from prescriptions that you see here to, for example, being able to document medication that you used in the past, or specific, let's say, history for a period of time, and many, many, many other uses. You just need a lot of imagination to be able to do them all.
Yeah. Going a bit away from FHIR, what does a prescription software also need? It needs, well, medications. And for that, you have a medication database. And that is kind of a huge topic in itself, right? It is a significant effort. You need more or less a whole team that does just that. So the medication database that we use in the software has 33 million articles. And each of those articles has hundreds of properties like package size, weight, number of tablets in it, and so on and so on. 33 million articles does not mean that there are 33 million different drugs on the German market. So things like aspirin shows up hundreds of times with different producers and different package size and different dosage and so on. And this kind of medication database also has a legal compliance, right? For example, KBB mandates that this database must be at most 2 weeks old.
Right. So we touched upon FHIR. You guys saw the funny old prescriptions, but you also seen the electronic prescription, and this is kind of the new kid on the block, because it was relatively recently introduced since 2022, and it has been mandatory since then for the publicly insured patients. So what does it actually mean now to support electronic prescriptions? Well, the first thing is back to FHIR again. You need new profiles for it. So KBV sat down, drew a bunch of new profiles with a bunch of differences, but the good thing is that it's kind of like a paper prescription, but extended. So they did a pretty good job to that. And of course, besides a new profile, here is the most important part, right? Is, of course, at the end of, let's take a paper prescription as an example, right? So the worst case scenario in terms of, I don't know, data leakage or something is if you drop it somewhere or you forget it somewhere or something, right? Or if somebody goes physically to doctor's place and steals it. But with the electronic prescriptions, they're all stored in a central place, some government, server somewhere maybe, or some private one. So how do they actually deal with this? The first way of dealing with this, you guys saw it with the signing process. You need to have specific hardware, specific software to be able to issue them in the first place. And you don't get that willy-nilly. It's a quite convoluted process to be able to get them in the first place. And of course, all the other security measures that any software has go into this as well.
Yeah, so what are the big players involved in getting electronic prescriptions going, right? So right now we need a central infrastructure. In Germany, this is called the telematic infrastructure that is maintained by a government-owned company called Gematik. And to use that infrastructure to send data to it, you need a connector that facilitates the network connection to this infrastructure. And you need a card reader. And in this card reader, you put in 2 cards, your practice card and your doctor's card. You type in your PIN, and together with the patient's insurance card, you have then a digitally signed e-prescription.
All right. So you might think now, okay, you have FHIR, you have workflows, you have medication data. You must save FHIR resources yet again. How do you actually make sure that all this works, right? Well, testing, and a lot of automation testing, actually. Because in most of scenarios, we do it end-to-end, meaning you need to create the FHIR resources to be able to open the application in the first place and do the right workflows. Then you need to verify if the right workflows happen, and at the end, verify yet again if the right resources have been created. And just as an example, let's take a scenario for the medication history. In this case, we make sure that we create all the FHIR information, and then we double check that we can access, for example, the medication for the past week, month, 3 months, and so on and so forth. But then it goes back to this special hardware or this thing, or you'll see in a bit another piece of hardware. You might have seen this at Lidl. It's a scanner. What does it do, actually? It scans this thing, the data matrix code, which actually contains the content of the medication plan. How do you automate the test that deals with that? Well, in this case, it's actually pretty simple, because this acts just like a simple keyboard. It just reads the information from that data matrix code and just types it really fast in the input field and presses also enter as well, so it's really smart. And we do kind of similar things. Because it acts like a keyboard, we can then create all the resources necessary and just paste them where the scanner would paste them, right? So we would validate to make sure that the right number of pages are there, if the practitioner is correct, if we get only articles or any other kind of, let's say, side cases that the practitioner might end up into. But then we get to the new kid in the block, which is really awesome, but brings up even more challenges, because then you have to deal with the telematic infrastructure. How do you mock a telematic infrastructure? How do you mock a connector? And last but not least, how do you mock physically removing cards from a card reader? Yeah, we have our QA colleague here, so he knows a lot more about it. He's a little bit stressed, so I'm not going to put it under pressure. But in this case, you have to do a little bit of manual work. In most of the happy cases, we can automate using a service called Titus, which actually helps us automate the happy flow, which he basically does is mock the telematic infrastructure and the connector, but no matter what so if you send the correct format of data, it will validate and it'll give you, oh, it's great. But if you try to give him some, let's say, a card number that shouldn't exist, it will say, oh, it's great, which is not great for us. So in this case, we have to treat these cases manually, where you need to deal with situations such as, just imagine that the connection to TTI drops while you're typing in your PIN. It's an early adopters problem right now. It will get more and more stable, but currently we face this problem from time to time. Also, practitioners are not very tech savvy. Most of the time they say, oh, but I put in my card in the morning, then I remove it, I go to lunch, it should work when I'm back, right? Well, no, you remove the card. So then how do you make sure that it works if the practitioner removed the card? Or type in the wrong PIN, or cancel the process altogether. So in these cases, we try to make sure that the whole process works end-to-end together with all the hardware.
Right, and now as a last point, we talked about not only specifications but also certifications. KBVX certifies software, and actually our kind of software, the prescription software, has to have 3 kinds of certification: a FHIR certification, an Arzneimittelverordnungscertification that makes sure that you can't harm the patient using the software, more or less. And there's a separate certification for E-Rezept e-prescription. How does the process look like? So KBV provides certain input data, like the practitioner or a list of patients, and a step-by-step workflow that you have to follow by hand, or however, they don't care, you just have to follow it. And in the end, it creates a FHIR resource, and this you send into KBV, and they check if it is the right format. For E-Rezept, you actually have to book a demo with them. You actually have to book a video call with them where you demo the actual usage of the software. And also an important point is certifications are not a one-and-done deal. They have a certain time period in which they are valid, so 3 years most likely. And you can see here the actual certifications that our software has. And you can see that we are coming up with 2 new certifications in September. And what's also important, a certification is a multi-week deal. So if you start a certification process, you will have to spend multiple weeks doing not doing just that, but with waiting time, it takes multiple weeks. And that is disregarding any implementation effort that has to go upfront.
Right. So we've seen how was the past and how we got to the present, but how do we see the future and how do we look at the future in terms of the users, right? So the first thing is the future is compatible. Long are the days where each company has its own solution and the users are kind of locked in. Now the government makes sure that if a practitioner is dissatisfied with a company or a solution, they can switch and they will not lose data, they will not lose business, and it should be a pretty straightforward process.
And we think the future is paperless, like electronic. The electronic prescription is just the first step. There's upcoming electronic health records that are also collected centrally and should make sure that Dr. A knows what Dr. B is prescribing, so that he does not prescribe a drug that clashes somehow with something you are taking regularly and you have kind of forgotten or did not think to mention to your new doctor.
All right, and last but not least, the future will be user-friendly, and what we mean by that is practitioner first. So you go to the practitioner and tell them, how do you like to work? And then you have to get the wiggle room between the government regulation and try to give him the best solution that he can get. And of course, just like Stefan said earlier, new doctors are coming up. They're used with mobile, they're used with laptops, they're used with new software that all of us use. So they are really not fond of the early 90s, early 20s look. So of course, we try to appeal them as much as we can on the look side as well, and also for the feel. Right.
So then we are finished with our talk. Thanks for the attention, and we are coming to the Q&A session.